Okay, everyone, good afternoon. Welcome. This is the TREC planning tour session for Odessa. My name is Christine Anderson. I am the Public Affairs and Communications Manager for the Texas Real Estate Commission and the Appraiser Board. We are joined this afternoon by the Odessa Board of Realtors and their association executive, Connie Coots, who is going to go ahead and introduce our two presenters. Some friendly housekeeping measures today. Please go ahead and feel free to ask your questions in the chat box or raise your hand throughout the presentation. Our presenters are really looking forward to interacting with you and hearing your thoughts on the topics they're talking about. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to Connie for further introductions. Thanks so much, Connie, for joining us today.
Thank you, Christine. I'm really excited to get to be here today with you guys. And of course, everyone knows Scott Kessler, and it's going to be everyone's first chance to get to meet Chelsea. So you guys are in for a real treat. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce these two great individuals. So Christine, of course, has already told you to make sure you mute yourself so we don't have any distractions. But I'm going to go ahead and start by introducing Scott Kessler, and I think he's going to be the, I think Chelsea maybe is going to start, or maybe Scott, I'm not really sure, but we'll go ahead and get started. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Scott. Of course, he it's my distinct honor to introduce him. He is our friend, of course. He comes here to West Texas a lot, and Scott and I have been friends for over 20 years. And Scott has served the real estate industry faithfully for more than 25 years. He has proven to be a committed leader and a member of the Association of Realtors, serving in numerous positions at the state and national levels. And Scott was recently just named the 2019 Texas Realtor of the Year. Scott has also been named the Realtor of the Year for the Greater El Paso Association of Realtors in 2003 and 2016. I'm going to do all this, Scott, so just lay back there. Scott served as chairman of the Texas Association of Realtors. Now they're the Texas Realtors, but to Scott, they're always the Texas Association of Realtors in 2015. And over the course of the last decade, he has served on or chaired more than a dozen other committees and task forces of this organization. At the national level, he has served as a director of the National Association of Realtors Board of Directors for the last 6 of the last 8 years. In 2016, Scott was appointed to the Texas Wind Insurance Association Board of Directors by Chairman of the Texas Department of Insurance as one of 3 at-large directors located out of the TWIA 14 county coverage areas. In 2018, Scott served as a National Association of Realtors Regional Vice President representing Texas and Louisiana, and was also appointed to the TREC Education Standards Advisory Committee. Kessler is also a TREC approved instructor since 2001 and teaches various continuing education courses. Of course, we love him out here in West Texas. He's one of our favorites. And Scott also earned his Bachelor of Science from Sul Ross University in 1985 in Criminal Justice and Communications. And Scott has been married to his lovely, beautiful wife, Paula, for 33 years, and they have 3 wonderful children and 1 diva of a granddaughter, Sloan Breyer. And it is truly my honor to, of course, introduce Scott, Chairman of the Texas Real Estate Commission, of course, Scott Kessler. Okay, everybody clap. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and.
Mine is much shorter. I think they'll like mine better.
Ours isn't that short. I added all this really mushy stuff.
Oh, no.
Okay, now let's go on to Chelsea. Because Chelsea Buckholz serves as the Executive Director of the Texas Real Estate Commission and Commissioner of the Texas Appraiser Licensing and Certification Board. And Chelsea is the first Texas agency, she's the first female in the agency history to serve in this role. Imagine that, the first woman. Isn't that awesome? Prior to serving as the Executive Director, Chelsea served as TREC's General Counsel. So just a very short time, but she did serve in that role prior to this. Before joining TREC, Chelsea was Deputy Director of Operations for the Community Development and Revitalization Division of the Texas General Land Office. And prior to that, she worked in the Land Office. Buckholz worked for the Texas Juvenile Justice Department as Policy Advisor to Governor Rick Perry, which we all love Rick Perry, West Texas. Chelsea began her legal career clerking for Phyllis Speedland on the Texas Court of Appeals, 4th District in San Antonio. Chelsea earned her undergraduate degree from Abilene Christian University and a JD from Pepperdine University School of Law. She completed the Governor's Executive Development Program in 2013. In her spare time, Chelsea enjoys the outdoors, cooking, reading, and spending time with her husband and her daughter. It is my pleasure to introduce you, of course, Chelsea Buckholz. Now it's your turn. So,
all right. Well,
Chelsea.
I will start, then I'll hand it over to Chelsea. And even after those introductions, I still think we have 3 or 4 minutes left of this presentation.
Okay, you want to go ahead and just carry on some more?
Hey, no. Thank y'all for logging in. You know, this is not the way this was scheduled. We were supposed to be there a few months ago in person, and I know we were going to have this at the new hotel y'all have, and I know Connie always rolls out the red carpet when we're in town, but this is what we're going to do, and we've got a short presentation. But more than anything, you're not going to get a lot of answers today. You're hopefully ask a lot of questions, and we take this back because this is really the information we need to move TREC into the future. Okay, this is going to help us establish the agency over the next 4, 5, 6 years. This is I believe our 3rd presentation. We've heard a lot of information, got a lot of input, and that's what we look forward to. I will say that I've been on the commission for a little over a year, and there's been a lot of changes. I think a lot of positive changes, and we will go over some of that. But we're really here to get your ideas, get your concerns, and answer some questions, but take it back to what I think is some of the best staff of any state agency in the state and say, you know, this is what our licensees are facing. How can we help them? I am extremely happy that Chelsea's in the executive director position. She's just done an extremely great job, and she just is, just really has learned, just tremendously, you know, over the past few months, exactly what TREC does and what TREC needs to do. So I'm going to let her start it out, and we'll get through this presentation, and we'll open it up for questions. And please, even if you don't want to ask a question, put it in the chat. That way we'll have it. We're taking all that stuff back. So Chelsea, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be with y'all today. I wish it was in person. West Texas has a special place in my heart, just having gone to Abilene Christian, which is debatable whether that's true West Texas, I know, but I claim it as such. The sunsets are prettier there than anywhere else I've ever lived, that's for sure. I have learned by doing these remote visiting sessions that I really need to get a better backdrop. I'm in the process of moving offices, and I'm really admiring where you're all sitting right now and all of the beautiful backdrops. So I apologize for mine. But regardless, I'm very happy to be in this role. It is not at all what I expected for my first 6 months in this position, thanks to COVID-19. I know it's thrown our entire world for a loop, and that's certainly true at TREC. I'll tell you, though, that TREC continues to conduct business well, though very different than we did before COVID-19. We are primarily remote, though last week we did start a very gradual and voluntary return to our office. We never stopped working, of course, but we have started the return to the office. That will be very gentle and slow until we're on the other side of this health threat, of course. But I'm proud of how our agency has responded to the change in the way we conduct business to be primarily remote. I hope that you have seen that in how you have interacted with our agency, that we haven't skipped a beat. If that is not the case, I really welcome your input on that. Our team continues to answer the phones and answer emails, though they do that from their homes now, so you definitely hear an occasional dog bark or child chatter in the background, which is how much of life is right now. One thing of particular note that I wanted to make sure all of you are aware of is the extension of renewals. We have extended the renewals that were due in March and in April, May, and June. But as of July 31st, those renewals will all come due. We will not have any further extensions on those renewals unless something monumental changes in the world of COVID-19. We have a great article on our website that talks about all the ins and outs of those renewal extensions and what that means for license holders. So I welcome you to look there for that article. And then, of course, as always, if you need help, reach out and talk to us. We want to make sure you have what you need to do that. I still consider myself new, though I definitely have a few more gray hairs and I'm more seasoned than I expected to be, thanks to COVID-19. But a few things I want you to just know about me that I think is important that you know. The first is that I'm new to real estate. I've always been interested in real estate and dabbled in that in my personal life, but this position, first as general counsel and then an executive director, is the first job I've had within the world of real estate. I have been in the political world for in my entire career, working for Governor Perry for about 6 years, both as an attorney and a policy advisor, and before I moved to the agency land, as we call it, to work for several state agencies. So I know, I have walked the halls of the Capitol, I've begged for money, I know the process of state government. I'm also a swift learner. Every job I've ever had, I've learned the subject matter on the job. So the fact that I'm new to real estate does not worry me. I will learn as fast as I possibly can. But also I am surrounded by experts in the field, one of which is Scott Kessler. So I'm grateful for the experience and the leadership of others as we lead this agency together. It's also important to me that we have a healthy relationship, we as an agency, with our license holders and the associations that represent our license holders, like Texas Realtors and all of the local boards. Our missions are similar, but they are not exact, and that is okay. We may not always be in exact lockstep, but regardless of that, it is very important to me that we are candid and transparent, and that we are focused on relationships, and that we're fair, and that we stay very communicative with you and with the local realtor boards. So if you see anything different than those attributes, I want to hear from you, because it's important that we be those things. So the mission for today is really just to share with you our strategic direction and our operational direction, and to hear from you on how best to navigate the road ahead. So I look forward to hearing from you on that. I did want to mention to you what our mission is, our mission at TREC, and I'm not going to read that whole thing because it's long, but the bottom line is that we must balance consumer protection with regulation that supports continued economic growth. So that is our tension, consumer protection and the economic growth in Texas. And we look forward to doing that well. So today, we'll walk through some of those potential initiatives. We want to hear from you on what you like and what you dislike. We want to know what we've missed. And most importantly, we want you to know that our ears are open. We won't linger on any one item for very long, but we'll just hit the high points, and we will want your feedback along the way. We will ask you, we will ask that when you provide your comments to us, that we have some specific questions that we'd like for you to answer. I think Christine will click through to the slide that has most of our questions on them, but and then we'll talk about them again at the end. But we want to hear from you on what you think of this direction. What's exciting? What do you think will have opposition? Also, how can we best support your work? It's important to us that we support your work. And then, are we acting as an impediment to your work? And if so, how? We don't want to be an impediment to your work. What do you wish we knew that we may not know? And then, have we asked the right questions? So this is, you can ask anything you want, and you can tell us anything you want, but I wanted you to have these questions in your mind for the feedback that we'd like to receive. So today we'll do a lot of listening. I will fill in wherever Chairman Kessler would like for me to, but he is one of you. He is a Texas Realtor, and he's the best person today to lead the discussion. So back to you, Scott.
All right. Thank you, Chelsea. I'm not seeing the PowerPoint on my end, so I'm just going to kind of go from my handouts. And if I miss something, you have a question, chat it in and we'll definitely answer. There's a lot of strategic initiatives that we're looking at that require some legislation. And as you do know or should know, the Texas Real Estate Commission cannot lobby. So if there's a really great idea that we need, the statute changed, we can't go to the governor's office. We can't go to the state representatives and lobby. That's where we depend on the associations. That's where we depend on the realtor members and individual licensees to do that. And that's why, like Chelsea said, the relationship between the Real Estate Commission and the associations, whether it's the Title Association, Realtor Association, whatever it is, it's very, very important because all of us are really looking for the same thing, and that's to move our industry forward and at the same time protect the consumers. That being said, like Chelsea said, we will not always agree. We can agree to disagree, but the communications has to be open. Something that we're really looking, a lot of talk about, it's coming from the governor's office and everything else is, is there a possibility for license portability? Okay. And we just started a new broker responsibility working group. We had over 80 applicants apply for that. Brian Sells from Midland has been appointed to that broker responsibility working group, so he will have some input on this. Is there a reason to substitute maybe some experience for education? If someone's been licensed for 25 years doing commercial real estate, should that count towards some of the 900 hours that's required to get a broker's license? That's one of the things that the broker responsibility working group is looking at. That's something we certainly want input, determine whether or not requirements are too restrictive as far as 900 hours of education. Should some experience count for that? Okay. Or do we look at reducing the total number of hours? We've had people saying, no, we need to increase hours, reduce hours. We want your feedback, and yet at the same time, if experience does count, there should be a limit on how much experience does count to offset the education. Okay. Something else maybe requiring some legislation is the broader authority to use drones by agents and inspectors and appraisers, and maybe even make it to where applicants looking to get a license can submit their fingerprints prior to taking the classes, prior to submitting for an actual application to determine whether or not their criminal history will be a barrier in getting a license. And then also, simplify some of the rules. I know for a while we talked about the advertising rule and, maybe it's not as simple as it needs to be. Also allow the agency to react at a faster pace, a smoother transition for natural disasters, whether it be a hurricane like we've had in the past, whether it be fires we had in Central Texas, flooding in the Houston area, or maybe even the COVID-19 for us to be able to delay, renewing your license because of natural disasters. All those are going to take legislation, okay? And those are not going to be something that's going to happen overnight, but we certainly want input on those. Some things in the house, we talked about this in February when we were in Austin, and I mentioned, explore the elimination of the check processing and have all payments made electronically. And I thought it was just a brilliant idea, and I thought I was going to get hauled out of the hide in a cart. I am amazed the Texas Real Estate Commission processes $250,000 worth of checks each month, okay? That being said, how do we move it forward to get more electronic payments? Increase automation and self-service by license holders. We certainly have seen a huge, move forward in that as far as sponsoring agents, terminating agents, all that's done electronically now. Pegging someone to be a supervisor, designating them to be a supervisor, that's all done electronically. Decreased license processing times. That's something we're always looking at. They say, well, how long does it take from the time the application hit to the application and the license being furnished? And, there's really not a good matrix to measure that because some people will turn in their application they might not turn in their education for 9 months. So, when does the process start? And on our website now, you can see how far, where we're at processing licenses and applications. And that's broke down by individual broker's license, salesperson's license, renewal, business entities, all those are broke down. Maintain a 1 minute average for, in our call center. And right now we're under a minute, and we've had this discussion, last week. Do we want to get to the point to where when the phone rings, someone answers? The sunset, we were almost 17 minutes on hold, at times. Now we're under a minute. We've been under a minute the last 2 months. Is that where we want to be? Or do we want to be to where you answer the phone? And me and Chelsea, we had a budget call last week. And, if we get to where we answer the phone, then do we have people sitting around that should be doing something? So, we're always working on that. We need more metrics to measure our performance. And, we need data on emerging models, whether it be wholesaling, whether it be internet sales and all those, how much of that is really affecting our market. And probably the easiest and most important thing the hardest but most important thing we need to do is we need to simplify the rulemaking and the stakeholders' understanding of rulemaking. And so those are some of the initiatives that we can do in-house and some that we need legislatively. And then I'm going to hand it back over to Chelsea.
Yeah, so those are the initiatives that we've identified, the direction we went ahead. A few of them require legislation. Several of them are just items that I can direct internally, and then some of those in terms of streamlining rules and any other rule change would be something that can happen at the commission level. So what we want to know is, are we on the right track? And what else would you like to see? What problems do you see? So that, what do we need to fix? I think the way in which we maintain a very healthy relationship is for two-way conversation, and also with hearing from you so that we know how to be better. It's very important to me that we do what we can to do right by people, employees within our agency and those that we serve. And that is you and the consumers. So with that, I'll open it up to your questions. We'll see if we have anything in the chat. Christine, if you want to kind of lead this part, or if you just want us to wing it, we're happy to. I do see one question in the chat, so I'm just going to read it and we'll talk through it. How or where do you send comments about brokers licensing and portability? I hold a New Mexico qualifying broker's license and have years of experience running a brokerage in New Mexico before I moved to Texas. Those years should count in some form to get my Texas broker's license, and that's from Beverly. Very good question, and I would ask Christine to put the last page of our slide back up, and that gives you 3 email addresses. For this question, I would ask that you send a comment, and I'll note it that you are making the comment today, but if you'd like to make an official comment for consideration, you can also send an email to general.counsel@trec.texas.gov. This question is one that's particularly noteworthy right now for the Broker Responsibility Working Group. They're beginning their work to make recommendations for the commission now. And this is one thing that they will be taking on in some capacity. License portability is a big topic nationwide, and it's one that is a challenge in Texas primarily because our requirements are substantially higher than any other state in the country. And most of our license holder community doesn't wish to lower those standards. However, that makes it particularly challenging for those moving into our state from other places or even practice in multiple states in a border type scenario to be able to share those experiences in that education. Scott, anything else you want to say about that?
No, we're expecting the Broker Responsibility Working Group to come up with some really great ideas and answers and direction. I also understand that Pam Titzel from, I believe you're from Lubbock. Panhandle is also on the call. She's also on the Broker Responsibility Working Group, and we're glad to have her on. but there's just so many moving targets with this, but we really need your input. Not only that, but also there's some contracts that have been proposed. You know, we want comments on that. You know, we're looking at doing some changes to the leasing and disclosing leasing, and also looking at some changes to the option period and where it's delivered. And so, I mean, not only chat it, but also send your comments in, because I promise you, every comment is read and dissected and looked at how it can affect the decision-making process. So yeah, let's open it up to questions. And Brian and Pam,
Brian,
thank y'all for tuning in and logging in today. And thank y'all for serving on the working group.
So Brian Sales actually made a comment. I recently was able to register DBAs through my license area on the TREC website. The process was extremely easy and saved me a ton of time and effort over the mail method. Thanks so much. So that's just great feedback. And Connie has asked, Connie, you can go ahead and ask your question if you want, but.
Okay, we had a broker that his license expired because he didn't take the broker responsibility class on time, actually. And so it was hard to get his license renewed. He couldn't do it online, in other words. So he was able to take his class within a short period of time, but it took us forever to get his license renewed because he had to submit everything via the mail. So I wish we could get more things online, because that was the only thing that he was lacking, was just to take his broker responsibility. So if we could have, everything else was taken. So would that be an option?
That's very helpful feedback. And I think I've had about 3 conversations just this week around our best next focus for streamlining what is available online. We're constantly looking at adding things to our website, and some of which requires a lot of back-end work in our database that is old and needs to be renewed, and that we're budgeting for that replacement over the next couple of years. And so that is a hindrance to some of this, but to the extent that it's possible, we want things to be available online for just that exact reason. Also, for efficiency's sake, we have about 250, I think Chairman Kessler may have mentioned this, about $250,000 a month in checks that come through the mail. And we would like to reduce that processing and to be able to do that online. Same with paper applications. We need to eliminate those. So I'm duly noted, and we'll work on that, because I know that when a broker's license expires, that affects a lot of people. So something needs to happen as quickly as possible to get them back online.
Right.
And let me add a little bit to that, Connie. We've had a couple of situations over the last probably 6 months where a license was renewed or not renewed because their broker had designated them as a supervisor. And this is hard to believe, but did not notify them that they were designated as a supervisor. Twice it was the spouse of the broker. They designated them supervisor, and when they renewed, they did not take that class. Every time there is a problem or a delay with that, staff has done an incredible job looking into it and figuring out where the breakdown was. Right. And like Chelsea said, we're looking for the next step on our online renewal and processing. So I'm glad you brought that up. Let us know, because that is something we can definitely work on. But like I say, every time we've brought it up to staff, they have went back and found the glitch in the system, what's happened, and they have done an incredible job learning from the input from the licensees. And we're managing about 200,000 licensees, not only just real estate, also appraiser, right-of-way agents, and stuff like that. So it doesn't matter how many good processes we have. If we have a bad one, we need to know about it so we can improve.
I can tell you the staff has always been so helpful to us here at the association. They've always been extremely helpful. We love the staff there at TREC, so we appreciate it.
Chairman Kessler, I just wanted to let you know that we also have Commission Member Russell on the call with us today.
Hi, Barbara.
She joined.
Hi, Barbara.
I'm not sure if she's ready to talk. I just didn't want to go without saying that she has joined us today, and we're glad to have another commission member on the call today.
Definitely.
One other question that we seem to have gotten several times on the other sessions that might bring up some good information to share was around education. A lot of people have been asking questions about online education versus in person. I'm not sure if Chair Kessler or Chelsea, you'd like to say anything in regards to the education model going forward, online versus in person. We've gotten a lot of feedback about that and just wanted to put that out there.
I'll go first, and Chelsea, you can clean it up. You normally clean up my messes. So I will go ahead and start. In May, we did pass at the commission level to require 3 hours of contracts. It was proposed to get 3 hours of contracts and increase the hours from 18 hours to 21 hours. The commissioners did approve the 3 hour of contracts, but does want it included in the existing 18 hours. And I believe that will take effect, and Chelsea, you can help me with that, I think in February.
Got it.
That 3 hours, and I think it's very important, and I want to thank the Education Standards Advisory Committee, we call it ESAC, for bringing this forward. That 3 hours of contracts is not going to be promulgated. It will not be like Legal 1, Legal 2, or broker responsibility. The local providers, the local associations, they can submit 3 hours to the education department at the Real Estate Commission and have it approved. And in El Paso, less than 3% of our transactions involve homeowners associations. We probably don't need an hour worth of training of homeowners association. Yet at the same time, in the Gulf Coast, they probably need at least an hour training in windstorm and effects of windstorm and the addendums for windstorm and intercoastal waterways. So this 3 hours can be really fine-tuned for what that market needs. It can be fine-tuned for leases for the property managers in the Midland, Odessa, Lubbock, Amarillo area. You know, you can have something strictly for property management as far as contracts and stuff. So I think that was a great benefit getting that 3 hours, but we did not increase to 21 hours. And Chelsea, if you want to follow that up.
You're exactly right. So on the number of hours, you know, we have done this additional 3 hours, but within that 18, we have gotten the question several times, are we thinking about, or is the commission thinking about increasing hours? And I think that has really been answered for now, based on the addition of the contracts requirement without additional hours. I will say we've also gotten kind of a similar or another question around education, and that is, after COVID-19, will we continually allow the live webinar scenarios for CE? And the answer is yes. We actually allowed it before COVID-19, but it was something that became much more utilized once we started, or once this pandemic came into our world, I'll say. So we do not anticipate making any change to that. We have really two avenues for continuing education. One is live, whether in person or remote. And then the other is the recorded version, which is what I think we call distance learning or distance education. So those are the distinctions, even though in my own mind, before it was in person or on the computer or some other remote mechanism, but those aren't our distinctions. So we will continue to allow that. I think it's a great way to reach folks wherever they are to get the education that they need.
And we want feedback, and we're not going to mention any names, providers or whatever, but we want feedback. I got a voicemail last Friday from someone in your area, and I won't use names. I'll use initials. First initial is Skeet, and second initial is D. And he took an online class, and he called me and he left me a message on what he thought about it and where he thought the holes were. And we will take that information and use it, okay? We need the feedback. When I teach a class, every one of y'all get an evaluation. You can certainly, evaluate me any way you want to. We need the same thing with the online providers. And I appreciated Skeet calling me and saying, hey, this is what I took and this is the way it went and this is my opinion and my views on it. So we need the feedback. We really, really do.
I know that we were very adamant to ask you to mute your mics at the beginning of this. However, if any of you would like to ask a question live, we welcome that. If a few of you start at once, we'll just take turns. You can also, there's a hand button to raise your hand.
I was going to remind everyone that they can raise their hand, hover your mouse over the video, that's the word we were looking for, the video screen, and there a toolbar will show up. You can raise your hand. There's a little hand question mark or symbol there to ask your questions, or you can always put them in the chat box if you're not feeling confident enough to ask the question verbally. I'm not seeing a ton, but oh, wait.
Okay, I think Joe was going to ask a question. Joe, do you want to ask a question? He was going to ask a question, so you're not shy, Joe. Go ahead after.
I was just going to say that I appreciated the idea of working on the education for to get a new broker's license. You know, not everybody can afford to go pay for a bachelor's degree and stuff like that, and for offering ideas. Don't know what they're going to be, but for experience or stuff like that, I like the alternative for trying to get those hours for those of us that show that we are responsible and have been doing things correctly. And so I really appreciate at least the idea of trying to work towards that.
And Scott, that's the broker responsibility working group that will be looking at that, correct?
Yeah. Yes, and they will.
And their next meeting is, when is their first meeting? Or
one more thing about education.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Garcia. I apologize.
That's okay. I was in the military, and I've seen the form online, but I can't figure out how to do or try to put in a request to see, and I don't even know how to. Like I was a 75 Bravo personnel administration specialist, and I don't know how that translates on hours and stuff like that, and how to do that process. I can't find good information on that.
Joe, email me and I will connect you to our licensing department who can help you navigate that exactly. I think it's a very specialized process where we just look at your background and see what would be, for lack of a better word, kind of transferable.
Joe, I just am posting the link to the page on our website for TREC benefits for veterans. We have a page on our website that links to all of the different information about procedures and benefits for veterans.
And I'll see if I can help you too, Joe. Then we can work together on that too. We'll send it to Chelsea when we can all get that done for you.
I just put my email in the chat so that you have it.
Awesome.
Christine, you also asked when the next broker responsibility working group meeting is. That's July 8th. It should be available on our website for listening in, and they will be tackling the experience versus education requirements for brokers.
And Christine, add my email to the chat. I'm not having the chat box show up. I think everybody knows how to get hold of me, but just in case. Any other questions?
By the way, in case anybody needs it.
I can't find that chat box place.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I can help you on that. If you hold your cursor over the kind of control panel, which is part of the video, it's the same little bar that allows you to mute or to turn off your video. There is two to the left of the hang up button is a little kind of a quote box. Click on that and then you'll get to the chat.
Kind of down at the bottom.
I don't see it.
Gotta kind of move your mouse around the video screen. I'll be your IT director.
And what I can do, just in case anyone else is having that same issue, I will see if I can unmute the attendees and make sure that there's not some sort of issue with this. Oh, wait, no, you can unmute yourselves. I'm sorry. And okay, sorry about that. Okay, does anyone else have any other questions?
I had a couple people ask me why we didn't do Zoom, and you might let them know why we didn't do Zoom. It's just because of the protection of the call. That's kind of part of the reason why.
Oh, sure. So yeah, the Department of Information Resources, our big IT agency here at the state, prefers that we don't use Zoom for security purposes. But I understand that that is probably something that most people are more familiar with. I apologize if there seems to be any issues with the service, though. So Scott and Chelsea, did you guys have any other, while I'm looking at the new class for MCE, this is Brian Sales, how to Zoom in Microsoft Teams. Thanks, Brian. This could be a great recommendation. Scott and Chelsea, did you guys have any other, I know we've done this presentation 2 or 3 other times. Any other topics of area of discussion that seem to be frequented that maybe we're glossing over in our last few minutes here?
Yeah, I mean, probably a couple things that have come up in the last ones that I haven't heard today. Number 1, questions on the proposed contracts and the lease addendum. But number 2, wholesaling. Is that a problem in your area? Have y'all encountered it being a problem? We've heard on the previous 2 that there are some issues. And so, yeah, I'd like some feedback on the proposed contracts, option money being, tendered to the title company and moving license holders disclosure from paragraph 4 to paragraph 8 and putting the leases in paragraph 4, a new lease addendum and stuff like that. I mean, give me some feedback. What are your thoughts?
So on the option money, when it goes to the title company, does that mean we are no longer going to be able to, the buyer's not going to be able to make that check out to the seller, or how exactly? I read all that. I didn't quite understand the change, how it's going to be effective.
Okay, and that's something that broker
John
lawyers.
Harridge.
Okay, John, go ahead.
Exiting.
Oh, John exited. Okay. All right, Chelsea, you want to talk about the option to the title company and broker lawyer meeting in July?
Yes. So, and Scott, if I mess this up, you let me know, because I also, Joe, find this somewhat confusing. But that would, so this is intending to address the issue that occurs when the option money is given to the title company instead of the seller, which is not how it's supposed to go, right? But title companies often receive that and are weary of refusing because of the need to keep that relationship. Okay, so that's what's trying to be fixed. So they're trying to make it more like the commercial agents, right? Which is one amount of money that is utilized for both escrow and option that the title company keeps. Correct? So that's the thought, and the reason is so that you get around the need to write 2 checks to 2 different places, and also to address the kind of changing world where very few people are writing checks these days. Have I gotten that right?
Yeah, and the proposal is it can be one check or 2 separate checks, the way it's proposed. Okay, I will tell you that we had conversations with the Realtor Association, the Land and Title Association, Broker Lawyer Committee, and we talked about different things in involving the option. But we're trying to streamline it, yet at the same time protect everybody in the transaction. So currently, Joe, the way it's worded, you can do 1 check or 2 separate checks. But the way it's worded now, it can go to the title company, and the escrow agent is authorized to release that option money to the seller.
I have a comment on that.
Okay, who's speaking?
I would say something else. This is Warren Ivy in Permian Basin. Hey, that sounds like a really neat idea. We do that with our commercial contracts now.
Right.
But when you look at the other end of this, once the title company takes possession of those funds, it's almost like pulling teeth trying to get them to release those funds. If there is one question, if one hair is out of place, they don't want to release those funds. They want T's crossed, I's dotted, which, okay, that's all well and good. But the way it works, the way we're doing it now, where the seller, the contract says that the option money is the seller's, give it to the seller. Let's not go to the title company and try and argue the release of that money to that seller. I think we're looking at the front end being a convenience, but I think on the back end, I think we'll have there'll be argument with the title company that's holding these funds and not wanting to release them because for whatever reason they come up with it. I don't think it's their call. Contract says it belongs to the seller. Give it to the seller up front. That way there's no argument on the back end.
Okay.
That's a great point. That's something, it sounded like someone else had something. I just wanted to mention that at the next broker lawyer committee meetings, this will be discussed in great detail. And the way in which these forms are passed, many of you probably already know this, but I'll mention this just in case. They have to go to the commission twice. They go to the commission to review, to be posted for public comment. And then that public comment period occurs. We're in the middle of it right now. And then we receive all the comments from the public. And then the broker lawyer committee reviews those comments and determines whether or not they want to recommend any changes to their proposed forms. And then whatever changes they recommend on those proposed forms, it goes back to the commission for adoption. So we're in that in-between time right now where they're receiving input to determine whether or not they want to continue to make changes. Now, if too many changes are made, if there's substantive changes, they affect people differently, they become more onerous on really, it's kind of hard in this case to determine what's substantive. I think we will say that they are substantive. We have to start the whole process over again. They will be proposed again, receive more comment, and then adopted. So all that to say, the process is just beginning. And your comment about it being hard on the back end is very important. So I can convey that to the broker lawyer committee. If you'd like to submit a comment officially, you can do that at that general.counsel@trec.texas.gov email. That's the official receiving point for forms, for comments to forms. And that will go, your email with your signature on it will go to the broker lawyer committee and they'll review it, and they really do. I mean, they take it very seriously. So, oh, sorry, Chelsea.
Yeah. Beverly McCleary says that I like the proposed changes to the contracts, but I'm wondering if the title companies are okay with this. And Joe Garcia has raised his hand to ask a question as well.
Okay. Let me follow up that one question real quick before we get to Joe's. With the conversation of the title company, they are certainly, I mean, they're kind of in a no-win situation. Sometimes they're receiving option money and they're not supposed to, and they receive it because they don't want to hurt someone's feelings. To follow up Warren's question, paragraph 23 talks about how they can release it, and the escrow agent is released from any liability, releasing the option to the seller. So it's in there, but that is also a question: how much liability are they released from? And paragraph 18 talks about they can disperse funds once they've determined they've had good funds. So, you know, the conversation was, okay, let's say it's supposed to be $1,050 and they deliver $1,045. What comes first, the option money or the earnest money? So, Warren, your question, please make that comment. They're trying to address it in the changes, but it does need to be clarified. Okay.
Okay. And Mr. Garcia?
I was just going to mention along that lines also what I don't know that it'll happen, but my hunch is what will happen also is there's going to create an additional fee that the title company is going to want to charge for some kind of processing of that option fee check.
That was asked when we visited with the Texas Land Title Association, and their response was, and Chelsea, you were on that call also, and I think Vanessa, and I think maybe even Mark, I'm not sure, but that is part of their escrow fee, you know, because that is part of the transaction. So at this time, we do not foresee any additional fees with that. So that was specifically asked.
Okay, so I'm going to give people a last couple of minutes to prep any questions that they might have, and be cognizant of our timeline. We're supposed to be finishing up here in about 5 minutes. So with that, Scott or Chelsea, do you guys have anything else that you wanted to make sure we cover today?
No, we mentioned one of our initiatives is to make data more available. And I wanted to mention, just give you a little bit more as to why we were, why we had that included. And it's one thing that hasn't come up in the last couple of months, which is iBuyers. But as there are new emerging business models in real estate, I think often those who have a more traditional model start looking around and feel a little bit threatened by the new ways. And we often receive questions and complaints about those new models in various, forms. And so I looked into that for the iBuyer business model and talked to the Real Estate Center at Texas A&M, and they have done a lot of research on what percentage of the market share iBuyers hold. And it differs by zip code, of course. And they did an assessment of the Houston area, and of the whole Houston area, there were a few zip codes where it was concentrated. And I think this may be more of an urban issue. I think the most that it represented was about 5% in certain zip codes. And I think that's true across the state. And that information was incredibly helpful to me, to know that it was such a small percentage of the market. And so that's the type of information I think that we need to partner with the Real Estate Center to just get to our license holders, so that you can make decisions on how you run your business and how you interact with consumers based on data, rather than, a news article that doesn't make it real clear how much of an effect something may or may not have on your business. So, but I will mention that iBuyer hadn't been a topic since COVID-19 hit. I wonder if it kind of will go away.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
Just real quick in closing, Chelsea mentioned that the contracts were proposed in May. Broker lawyer will meet again in July. It'll go back to August. They will either be adopted or could be reproposed. The commission and broker lawyer committee is taking all the input. We want to get some contract stuff cleaned up as far as leases and option, but we're not going to clean it up just to clean it up. If it needs to be reproposed, it'll be reproposed. But not everything TREC does has to go through the public comment. So if you have an idea, you think we can improve something, whether it's customer service, whatever it is, let us know, because there's a lot of things that we can change internally without going through the public comment. So when you see, changing the contract might take, a process of a year or even more to get through all the proposals and adoptions and everything, don't think everything is like that. The staff at the Texas State Commission is extremely smart. They can adapt to changes. So let us know. And we want to move the agency forward. That's our sole purpose, is to move it forward. And everybody has my email and phone numbers. You're welcome to reach out.
And Connie, just before we close, did you have any other comments or questions?
Yes, we just really appreciate you guys including Odessa in this planning tour. We love you guys there at TREC. We love you, Scott. Want to say hi to Barbara Russell. I can't see her on the screen, but we love Barbara, of course, in West Texas too. We appreciate everything you do for us in West Texas, and thank you, Christine. And it was an honor to be included in today's session. So thank you. We wish you could have been here in West Texas. Next year, maybe we can get you out here in West Texas to our new hotel.
We'll come.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate it.
Thank
All
you
right, guys.
all. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. We'll go ahead
Thanks,
and wrap up today. And like I said, I'll share this information later if anyone wants to send the video to anyone else.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Connie, for having us
Thank
today.
you. Thank you, guys. It was an honor. Thank you. Bye-bye.